Item number 7 is the budget reviews. The first one is the JJC.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. You can find the child care budget on page D23 of your budget. Of course, the child care fund is composed of essentially two different operations. You have the detention operation, which is headed up by Rhonda Westphal, as you know, and then there's really a court function as well with placement programs and that sort of thing, which the courts are involved with. So the child care fund includes both of those. I know the detention portion of that budget is first on the agenda. If you turn to page D24, that gives a breakout of the cost by different functions. You can see that of the $21.7 million operation, about 10.9 of that is actually in the detention piece at the youth home or the juvenile justice center. And you've got about 2.7 in placement programs and about $3.5 million in placement costs where we're housing kids in outside institutions. There's a few things going on in the child care fund itself. Most notably, you'll see under the room and board section of the budget, there's about a $300,000 reduction there. So what we're trying to do is align costs more closely with our actual expenses of housing juveniles in outside facilities. You'll also see further down there's a decrease of about $150,000 in contract services. That is mostly in psychiatric fees at the juvenile section of the operation. There's a large increase in internal services. It's about $500,000 or $450,000 maybe. What's happening there is that's an increase in indirect costs that the state is allowing us to charge back to them. So they normally pay 50% of the operation. In this particular fund, they're also allowing us to charge an additional 10% in indirect costs. So those revenues, half of that flows in as revenue from the state, the other half flows in as revenue to the general fund, more or less. So there's a number of things going on. You'll see this, the pension line item is reduced by $400 and some thousand. That's all tied into what we have said very early on in this process about how we're realigning our chargebacks for pension and retiree health care charges. The net bottom line is that the general fund contribution is going down about $770,000 from 17 to 18. You'll see that the revenue is up by about $1 million. That's basically the state's portion of this. So they pay 50% of the net costs of operating the whole fund. So I know Rhonda's here. I know she's first on the agenda if she wants to talk more about kind of operations in general. If you have any questions for me about what's going on within the numbers, then I'd be certainly happy to answer those.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Rhonda Westphal. I'm the facility director, and if you, as Steve had indicated, if you have any questions about what's going on operationally at the facility that I might be able to help you with today, if at all.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my number is a little more historic, and my question is a little more historic in nature, and that is the sizable jump in part-time and full-time wages from 2016 to 2017. The numbers are reasonably flat, you know, from this past year to this upcoming year, but you know, it looks like there was about a 25% increase in that previous year in full-time wages, and then even larger increase in part-time wages from 16 to 17, and just a little historical context for us newer commissioners.
I suspect that that is related to our RIF that happened in late 2015. We closed down some of our treatment programs. We had a reduction in force. Those programs reopened in 2016. So it's not added positions. There was positions that were budgeted for, vacated during a reduction in force, and then refilled when we reopened those programs.
Okay, so programs may have been shut down as a result of the economic times, or?
Well, there was several issues going on with regard to that. There was a decreased need on behalf of the court for residential services, and I can, certainly Nicole can probably speak to that better than I can. And there was also an effort to take our treatment programs and reinvent the approach that we were using with kids. The approach we're using now is one that's more trauma-formed. It's more aligned with evidence-based services and interventions.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rhonda, I'll start with you since you're up here, then I'll get back to you, Steve. I got a couple of questions. Your capacity from 16 to 17, where did you end up?
We are housing an average of about 60 youth on a daily basis. Now, that's an average. Sometimes we'll be a little higher than that, and then sometimes a little bit lower.
And how many can you accommodate?
The total beds in the facility is 140. Historically, those beds have not been used. 2 years ago, we were housing an average of about 75 youth. So our average usage is probably down, I'd say, about 10 to 15 youth in the last 5, 6, 7 years.
Which hopefully is a good trend.
That is a good thing. That's a good trend, yeah.
And hopefully it goes away.
Yeah.
Have we, I know years back, your predecessor, we talked about maybe getting outside to see if, if there's any other housing since we had the facility. Have we looked at anything like that?
We still continue to provide bed space for St. Clair County. St. Clair.
Excuse me, is that part of the number that you're talking about now, or is that above?
That is part of the number that I'm
part of the
talking about
number.
now.
Okay.
They're housing an average of about 5 youth, but just in our detention program, not in our treatment program. We entered into, Chuck actually entered in, my predecessor entered into a contract in summer of 2013. We still are in that same contract. It's been renewed twice. That's coming up for renewal in front of the board this winter with the recommendation for incremental increase on that daily rate as well. St. Clair has agreed to that. They agreed to it last week. So I anticipate that we will continue on with that contract if the board wants to approve that, but we'll be getting a little higher daily rate on that.
Okay, and then, and that's great that St. Clair and you continue, but is there any other community or any other counties that you're looking at of?
Well, we haven't. We're in the Metro Detroit area. Wayne County has their own youth facility. Oakland Children's Village has their own facility. We have done some, not in a formal contractual way. We have housed a few Sanilac County youth on without a contract in place, but have charged them the same per diem that we've been charging St. Clair. It hasn't been done in a formal way. We are available to Sanilac. They don't have a large utilization, usage need, but we are positioned right in the middle of Metro Detroit with facilities that have their own services for kids.
Okay, and the next question for you is, do you know your food cost per meal or per day?
Our food costs per day, I would be guessing, with the 3 meals, probably about $15, $16 a day.
Okay.
It's 3 meals and a snack.
When you get the opportunity, if you could forward on to us your actual cost, if someone can get that information.
Yep.
And then where you're getting your food from.
We have an internal food service program. We have a full-service kitchen, so we have county employees who are in our kitchen working. They're employed by the county. We have reduced the staffing in there in the last 2 years, though. We've reduced 1 FTE in our kitchen to kind of get those costs down.
Okay. Have you guys explored working with the jail? I know they have a vendor, and I can't remember if anybody else can off the top of their head the cost, what they're paying. Okay, I'm asking, and has anybody reached out to you to see if you guys can make more meals, if you can, or vice versa, to see if you guys can
I've done some very preliminary review with costs if we were to use an outside vendor. Of course, I mean, we have county employees that are filling those positions right now, so I don't want to step out of my lane in that regard. We have not had another department reach out to ask if we can prepare meals on site for another department. That has not happened.
I'd be curious.
Point of information. Oh, yeah, thank you. I know that Martha Teaberry is redoing their kitchen right now. They're doing it with the anticipation, and they're planning their own new kitchen, but they've also left room for additional services. I know that they were talking with Meals on Wheels. I think the cost per meal for Meals on Wheels that they were guaranteeing them was at 3 meals a day would be considerably even lower than your 16. And I know you just guessed, so I understand. And that's with, you know, people that are already, you know, employed at Martha Teaberry. So it would be something maybe if you wouldn't mind or would like to talk to Kevin Evans about, because they're also, he's been talking with the Meals on Wheels people a bit, and maybe, you know, making that offer to them to have a centralized kitchen. They have flash freezing available. They have, you know, all the nutritional requirements already because of, you know, being that type of facility. So it might be something. I know Commissioner Carabelli's been talking about this forever. I've talked with Kevin about it, and so they are in the process of doing this and leaving space open to increase demand. So it might be something to look at.
Yeah, I'll reach out to Kevin right away.
Great, thanks.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Now for Steve, if you mind. Steve, I understood you talked about the pension and health care. I understand that. Did you touch on the supplies and services?
No, I did not. I was gonna, when
I would
Rhonda was
appreciate
done, I was gonna come back up. I did not do that.
I'm glad you are, because I was
Yeah.
waiting for you.
No, when I sat down, I realized I did not do that. There's a couple things going on in supplies and services. So there's about a $200,000 increase going on there. So that's made up of an increase in a number of
Yeah,
smaller
okay.
decreases.
And here's where the confusion lies. Hold that thought, and I apologize. I don't mean disrespectful in stopping you. But the actual adopted, okay, is $617,500. You're wanting to, and if I'm wrong, correct me. And you're wanting to amend the current fiscal year by just approximately $200,000. And then you're asking for over $1 million in 18. Am I reading this wrong, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the 600, I'm not familiar, as I stand here, that 617 was the adopted. I trust that it is. I don't know what we did during the year to increase it from 617 to 802.
So do you see the disconnect where it's not a
Right.
it's a $400,000 increase?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I'll research that and get back with you. What's happening from the amended 17 to the adopted 18 is a couple of things. Historically, until the recession of 2008, the county supplemented L'Anse Creuse schools for the difference between what they received in state aid or state school funds for the folks that were the teachers at the facility and what their actual costs were. 2008, that stopped, and it stopped until we're proposing in 2018 to bring that back on board. The school approached us earlier in the year and said, well, hey, it's been 8 or 9 years, you know, we're kind of struggling as well, can you help us out and restore that funding that was in place for until 2008, as far as I could remember in my history here at the county. So we've put $300,000 into the supplies and services line. The state pays half of that. So that's about a $150,000 increase, if you will, in that line item. And then we went through and analyzed other operating costs and made about $100,000 in reductions. And I don't know all the totality of all those.
Okay. If you can get some more information on the deal you have with the school, I'd appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Because off the top of my head, I know I don't want to say game, I know the process of why they would want to do that, because they get to count the heads that are inside the facility, and they get the state dollars to pay for that. They get all those state dollars, and then in turn you get the service of somebody coming in
Right.
and educating. So for us to pay a penny outside of that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. If they're getting all that money directly from the state, they're actually getting it and keeping it, and we're going to subsidize it. I think you need to take a good look at that, and I hope I'm wrong, but I got a funny feeling that I'm right. Okay, and we need to find out why from 16. Or
Yeah, that one.
the adopted
Yeah, that's
17.
a $100,000 a couple $100,000, and off the
Right,
top of my
so
head,
we're
I
not
don't know
going
that.
200, it's actually 400,000, which is a double of what, I know your paperwork says what it is, but
Right,
it's really
right.
close to $500,000.
Yeah, I'll get back with you on
All
that.
right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kind of along the same lines, Steve, and maybe the department head wants to come up. This is on the conferences and training. I'm looking at your supplemental sheet, and one of the items, if you look at your 2018 list of planned conferences, the one item number 5, it's in Indianapolis. It's $8,200. Now I know you're sending 3 people there, but some of the other ones you have just as many, if not more people, and it's far less. Is there a reason why that particular program costs so much?
I'm guessing, without having that right in front of me, that increased cost is related to that conference being a week long,
Okay,
as opposed to maybe a day long.
Okay.
And being more local.
and are any of these conferences mandatory? Are they something that you have to mandatorily go to? Or is it just something
They're
that,
not mandated. We have mandated training hours by
Right.
licensing. That would, I can't say that conference is mandated.
okay,
Can I say that that conference is necessary for our staff to have the tools to provide the interventions our kids need? Yes.
Sure.
Yes. And that happens to be our clinical therapists that would be attending
Okay.
a conference in Indianapolis with our treatment team.
okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. This might be just as much of a question for Steve as you, Rhonda, but, so I have to go back to the supplies and services again, Steve, and I really didn't understand what you said, so I don't know if anybody else really did, but, so if you wouldn't mind either, realizing that we don't know any of the background of this, so if you kind of talk about stuff, like the guys in the pension board meeting, talking all over my head. But I don't know if you want to maybe get something to us that maybe might explain that, or if
It
you
might be
could-
better. I mean,
Right.
we've put 300,000 in there for subsidy to the school, went through and made other reductions in line items by another 100,000 to get to that net of 200. But back to Commissioner Caravelli's question, I don't know why the amended budget is a couple $100,000 higher than the adopted for that category.
And let's go back to 2016 actuals, 460, 220 in 2016, $1,006,000 in 2018. That's over double. So the actual in 2016 shows 460, 220. And we're looking at, over 500,000.
Understood.
So, if you could make that make more sense, that would probably
Absolutely.
work out better.
Absolutely.
And kind of the same thing, and I don't know if this is what you were asking Commissioner Leonetti about the conferences or training, but similarly in 6, it was 19,241, and we're asking for 45, so there's another, more than double increase
And that could be
in
somewhere
something
in
like that.
Rhonda's budget or the court budget. We'll piece all that together for you.
Right. So those are the kind of things that, at least if nothing else, throw up a question mark to us to find out why in 2 years what we need that. Is it a once every 4 years comes this one
Right.
type of conference that everybody has to go to? Is that how it works?
Right,
or-
and back to Commissioner Drolette's comment earlier
Mm-hmm.
about the wages. So you'll see on the wages and almost all of the fringes, we're budgeting at, I think, 100 heads. And so we budget based on 100 census.
Mm.
And if we're only at 40 or 50, then our actual expenses are gonna be far less because we're not filling vacant positions.
Right. So that's part of that.
Because we don't know where the census is gonna be, so we're,
Right, which also works in similar, kind of to your budget that you're always X amount over at the end of the year for things like
again,
this, but that's
yeah.
quite a bit. That's all I'm
no,
saying.
I understand.
That's a
You
lot
could
of money.
it could be things in supplies and services that are driven by that kind of thing too, such as bedding and clothing, or the actual food costs, or maybe not to the degree of 400 to $1 million, but
Right,
you know,
okay. Yeah, so if
we'll,
that,
we'll piece all that together for
all
you.
right, thank you.
Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Thank you, Chair. This isn't actually directed to anybody, but Commissioner Carabelli has been asking for about 2 years every entity that supplies food or purchases food from anybody for meals, how much they're paying. And I think really to get to where he's trying to go, what I would like to see is maybe a document coming. Well, several people have said, well, we'll get back with you. And I don't always know if they have or they haven't. But what I would like is like a list of those entities a coordinated document so that we know how much entity number 1 is paying for food, how much it costs entity number 2 to produce food. Kind of put it all together in a package, because I know where he's trying to go, and there's always, we're going to get the information back, but I just think if we don't have something coordinated, he can't get to where he's trying to go. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, can I ask, when you kind of gave us a guesstimate of how much meal costs, is that inclusive, do you think, of wages and everything that goes along with it? So that's everything combined, including your staff, when you give me when you give a meal price on that, right?
That did not include the factoring in of revenues. Our particular meal program is through the National School Lunch and Breakfast.
Mhm.
So if we prepare qualifying meals, we have revenue come in.
Okay.
So that did not include the
Right.
revenue pulled off the top.
And that would be something like Commissioner Kleinfeld and Commissioner Carabelli we'd like to see, because it just seems kind of, it just doesn't seem right to have 5 different entities in the county preparing their own meals when 1 or 2 of them could do it if it would save money or even cost the same. So, but obviously you'd have to take that into account when you're given those numbers. So that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you, and I'll contact Kevin right away on that.
Okay.
I understand your
Thanks.
needs in that regard. I agree with you. It doesn't make sense to have all that happening at different locations.
Commissioner Duge?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here. A couple of things as far as the food and how that's processed. If we can get a number from you, I remember going through this when we had to redo the kitchen at the jail, and that we were paying bag lunches at the jail were more expensive than when we prepared it ourselves. And one of the main things that we have to keep in mind is you've got, if you're getting subsidized for children's food, then that's different than what's going on at the jail. Can you mix those two? Maybe yes, probably no. But mixing Martha T. Berry food into it, they have their specific needs also for the people that reside there. So it's going, I'd like to get a number for what it's costing us to feed people from you, but we have to keep in mind that there are separate requirements for everybody in the county. If we can get a deal on buying something, then I'd like to coordinate it. And I think Commissioner Carabelli is 100% correct. But we also have to keep in mind that the requirements for who's getting fed are very, very different from one to the other location. That's what I wanted to bring up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sauger?
Yeah, on the St. Clair County, how many beds are they allowed at the county youth home?
We don't have a cap, but they have been using an average of about 5 beds a day.
5 beds?
Sometimes it's as low as 2 or 3, and another day we might have 9 or 10 kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if they're used, if they have to go back to St. Clair County for any court, their people come up and pick them up, I
Oh,
presume, yeah.
absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Yep, they do all the
Okay.
transport, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rhonda, on your reimbursements, how do you budget that? Reimbursement, I'm assuming, is the amount that the facility is reimbursed for by the parents for the stay of the kids. Is that correct?
That would be one of the reimbursements, yes, the parent reimbursement.
Okay. Where else would you get reimbursement?
Well, it's St. Clair County, of course, pays us to house kids. That would be part of revenues, or if I don't know that you want to call it reimbursement, but it is a revenue line.
Is that number contained in the reimbursement line?
It is in a separate reimbursement line.
So what you'll see, Commissioner, is that the St. Clair County reimbursement is under charges for services. That's the charge back to them. The reimbursement line item is the reimbursements we're receiving from the parents.
Okay. And how do you budget that? Is it based on a percentage? I mean, we're
trying to look at historical trends and just kind of, take our best estimate, or our best educated guess, because we don't know year to year based on who's in and, you know, the financial situations of the parents that are in, that sort of thing. So we charge the parents, whether we receive the cash or not, is just, it's kind of a ebb and flow with the economy and
What
the
happens? I
demographics.
mean, is there a collection? Do we have collections of these amounts?
The collections for the parent reimbursement is actually done by our
But the
family
court does that.
They do it on behalf of the facility as part of their collections department.
So who does it? The court does it?
The family court. but
Yeah.
Okay. And so then do they file actual litigation against people who haven't paid?
They bring them before the referees typically, and they work out payment plans and, they work out payment plans with them. And then sometimes things are waived by the judge, but.
So do you have a list of what your outstanding amounts due are? I mean, how much is due to the county from?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but we can get that for you.
Okay. So once a kid is discharged from the juvenile court, does that, obviously that debt stays, and once they're discharged, the referee loses jurisdiction and ability to collect. Then what happens on that?
Well, I'll have the court speak to that.
They continue, sorry. The rate of, they're charged it's $170 a day that goes on the parent's bill. It is based on ability to pay. You know, there's an indigency standard and those sorts of things. Parents come in and make payments when they can. When the child is discharged, their reimbursement case is still there, and so reimbursement hearings are done by our chief referee, where parents come in and talk about what they can pay, what they can't pay, where they're at, those sorts of things. But their JJC stay is on there. There are probation service fees. There are state minimum costs. There are many things. So a bill could look like tens of thousands of dollars, depending on usage. If a kid went to placement, those sorts of things. I mean, realistically, we probably get pennies on the dollar. Not all of our families can afford to pay like the actual amount. It's very rare that we have a family that's keeping up with $170 a day while their child is in detention. Or placement costs can be more, you know, $200-300 a day, depending.
Okay. Could you just get us an idea of how much is owed to the county that's outstanding on that?
Yeah, we should be able to
Okay.
get that out of court view.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Are there any other speakers? I don't have any on my list. Is there a motion to receive and file? Moved by Brown, supported by Lucido. Please vote on your iPad.